Amaziah, king of Judah, discontent, pride, and bitterness. Hello, everyone. My name is Persohn. You can contact me by email at pastor@mascot.church or in the comments below. It is important to learn moral and ethical and spiritual lessons from people in the Bible. It's also important not to read yourself into Scripture. So I've heard people say silly things like, well, you know, when the Lord Jesus hung on the cross, he was having a bad day, but he kept his eye on the job, on his resurrection, on the finished product, and that's how God helped him through. Therefore, when you have a bad day, this is what you should do. No. You got to be careful about that. Yet on the other hand, there are many Bible stories that are extremely useful. There's commentary with them. They help us to understand human nature and how we need to act and so on. And one of my favorite places to pick up these stories is from the books of Kings and Chronicles, which looks at the kings of Israel and how some succeeded and some failed and so on. And not only the kings of Israel in the north, but the kings of Judah in the south. Today we're going to look at one of those. We're going to address a couple of issues. You know, the battles of life, the battles against the beast that you have on the inside of you, those battles are fought in a very lonely place. You really don't have a lot of help from outside sources to deal with pride or arrogance or greed or whatever. It's between you and the Lord, and that can be a dark place of challenge. And of course, the Lord is there, but sometimes during these times when you're settling these things in yourself, he can appear or seem to be very distant, because really it's often a matter of repentance, and it's a matter of, understanding who you are and so on. Now, I want to talk to you about King Amaziah. You can find the story of King Amaziah in two books in the Bible. And the two books are in the book of 2 Kings chapter 14 and 2 Chronicles 25. These are parallel accounts. There's much more detail in 2 Chronicles chapter 25. Now, who was Amaziah? Well, Amaziah was a king of Judah, and he started off reasonably okay, but then things began to deteriorate very, very quickly. And it's in this deterioration and Amaziah's challenge that we can pick up some wonderful moral lessons and some wonderful spiritual lessons. So what I'm actually going to do is to read this, but I'm not going to put it on the screen. And so you'll see me looking down and reading. We'll make a couple of comments along the way. Amaziah, this is 2 Chronicles chapter 25. Amaziah was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoaddan of Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, yet not with a whole heart. So this is problem number one. The king was a man who was, maybe we could say, half-hearted. Okay? As soon as the royal power was firmly his, he killed his servants who had struck down the king his father, but he did not put the children to death according to what is written in the law in the book of Moses, where the Lord commanded, fathers shall not die because of their children, nor children die because of their fathers, but each one shall die for his own sin. So in this case, Amaziah he obeyed the law of Moses, but you do have this sense of vengeance going on. He probably had some right to do that. He killed the servants, so kind of hold that in your mind. Now we continue with the story. Verse 5, Then Amaziah assembled the men of Judah and set them by fathers' houses under commanders of thousands and of hundreds for all Judah and Benjamin. So this is the southern kingdom where he is reigning. Okay. He mustered those 20 years old and upwards and found that they were 300,000 choice men fit for war, able to handle spear and shield. Okay, so he's going to war. He has got 300,000 men over the age of 20, which is they had to be warriors. Now he does something else that's wrong. Now, pick this up. He hired also 100,000 mighty men of valor from Israel for 100 talents of silver. So from the northern kingdom, he hires 100,000 fighting men. But a man of God came to him and said, O king, do not let the army of Israel go with you, for the Lord is not with Israel, with all these Ephraimites. So now the prophet comes to him and says, no, don't bring the armies of Israel with you. The Lord is not with them, so he won't be with you. So Amaziah has a problem. Then the prophet says, anyways, but go, act, be strong in battle. Why should you suppose that God will cast you down before the enemy? For God has power to help or to cast down. And Amaziah said to the man of God, what shall we do about the 100 talents that I have given to the army of Israel? And the man of God answered, the Lord is able to give you much more than this. So he's saying, cut your losses, king. Just give them the money and go. Then Amaziah discharged the army that had come to him from Ephraim to go home again. And they became very angry with Judah and returned home in fierce anger. But Amaziah took courage and led out his people and went to the valley of Salt and struck down 10,000 men of Seir. So these are Edomite men. The men of Judah captured another 10,000 alive. Okay, now we see something in Amaziah that's not entirely good here. It's a bit on the wicked side. So he's killed 10,000 in battle. That's basically it. But look at this. The men captured another 10,000 alive and took them to the top of a rock and threw them down from the top of the rock. And they were dashed to pieces. That's terrible. That's very, very cruel. But the men of the army who okay, and then we'll make a comment here. So Elisha earlier had the opportunity to bring judgment, death against captured prisoners, but he sent them home. So this was known in Israel that there's a way to treat captured prisoners. Amaziah, however, is being extremely cruel. He's taking these prisoners of war and he's executing them in a terrible way. Okay? Now remember the group of soldiers that he sent back to the northern kingdom with the silver? But the men of the army whom Amaziah sent back, not letting them go with him to battle, raided the cities of Judah from Samaria to Beth-horon and struck down 3,000 people in them and took much spoil. So now what's happening? So these violent soldiers, these mercenaries that Amaziah had hired from the northern kingdom aren't allowed to fight. Well, why did they want to fight anyways? Why not just take the money and go? Because they would be allowed plunder if they joined in the battle. So in other words, if they found gold, they could keep gold or women or whatever. Battle in those days was a terrible thing. They didn't have it. They were sent back to the northern kingdom. They then came and began to raid the southern kingdom. So already Amaziah's sin, his rebellion against God, even though it was corrected, has begun to catch up on him. It's just not going well. You see this thing going on in his life. Now Amaziah had just struck the Edomites. He just won in Edom, but he does something that is mind-snappingly stupid. Truly, truly stupid. Verse 14 of 2 Chronicles 25. After Amaziah came from striking down the Edomites, he brought the gods of the men of Seir and set them up as his gods and worshiped them, making offerings to them. Now, when you read the commentators and you read the life of Amaziah, the commentators ask these questions. They say, well, why? For what possible reason could he have done that? In some cases, if your enemy is victorious over you, you might bring their gods back and worship them. Now, God completely prohibited that. Nevertheless, you could understand logically, okay, I was defeated by this enemy. Their gods must somehow be powerful. Maybe you could bring the gods back from a foreign land and you'd show them off. Their statues, you'd show them off as being defeated in some kind of a victory parade. But no, Amaziah did nothing of the sort. He brought the Edomite gods back into Judah and worshiped them. Amazing, okay? And worshiped them and made offerings to them. Therefore, the Lord was angry with Amaziah and sent to him a prophet who said to him, why have you sought the gods of a people who did not deliver their own people from your hand? That's a pretty good question, Mr. Prophet. So listen to him say it again. Why have you sought the gods of a people who did not deliver their own people from your hand? But as he was speaking, the king said to him, have we made you a royal counselor? Stop. Why should you be struck down? So the prophet stopped, but said, I know that God has determined to destroy you because you have done this and have not listened to my counsel. So this is a very critical time it is a very critical time in Amaziah's life. He's not listening to the counsel of the prophet. He's worshipped idols. God gave him the victory over Edom. He was cruel in his victory. You can kind of see this darkness appearing in the life of this king. You can see it if you read a little bit between the lines. When you read the scriptures, ask yourself, what is the Holy Spirit kind of saying here? Is there something I can learn, I can pick up, I can understand from from this text. And if you notice my light is changing, it's because, again, I'm using natural light, and it changes outside while my camera tries to compensate. So that's all that is. All right, let's continue on and have a further look. In verse 17, now remember, Amaziah did not heed the counsel of the prophet, but he does do something in the next verse. Then Amaziah, the king of Judah, took counsel and sent to Joash, the son of Jehoaz, the son of Jehu, the king of Israel, saying, come, let us look one another in the face. So what is he saying? So Amaziah has now taken counsel, but obviously not the prophet's counsel, more than likely the bureaucrats who worked for him or with him, who said, king, you just defeated the Edomites. Why don't you go after Israel? Well, why would he want to go after Israel? Well, remember those mercenaries who started raiding the land? Maybe he wants vengeance. Maybe he said, your men have come and raided the land. Now it's time for war. We're going to come after you. Who knows? But remember also the prophet said that God would darken the heart. He would go after Amaziah. So let's continue on. And Joash, the king of Israel, sent word to Amaziah, the king of Judah, a thistle in Lebanon sent to a cedar on Lebanon. I'll read it one more time here. A thistle on Lebanon sent to a cedar on Lebanon, saying, give your daughter to my son for a wife. And a wild beast of Lebanon passed by and trampled down the thistle. That's a really interesting riddle. But the king of Israel, who was actually the enemy already of Amaziah, speaks wisdom. He said, look, what you're talking about is it's like a thistle asking to be equal to a cedar. It's just right. And the thistle thorn thing is interesting. It's used several times in the Old Testament as well. But he said, listen, Amaziah, by wanting to come and face me and have war with me, that's like a thistle trying to be on equal terms with a cedar. You're going to get trampled. So the king of Israel knew that Amaziah could not win against him. Okay, so so after this. Let me read this. Give your daughter to my son for a wife, and a wild beast of Lebanon passed by, trampled down the thistle. You say, see, this is the king of Israel still talking to Amaziah. You say, see, I have struck down Edom, and your heart has lifted you up in boastfulness. But now stay at home. Why should you provoke trouble so that you fall, you and Judah with you? Now this, ladies and gentlemen, is the time the story takes a dark turn, but a very important turn. Even Amaziah's enemies could see that he was doomed. The prophet knew he was doomed. Amaziah, the king of Israel, who was now not on good terms with Amaziah, could see it. He said, you're going to destroy yourself in Judah. Don't do this. But Amaziah, the next verse says, would not listen. Well, why would he not listen? For it was of God. I better read that again. But Amaziah would not listen, for it was of God, in order that he might give them into the hand of their enemies, because they had sought the gods of Edom. Wow. So God is saying, because you have worshipped idols, and this was God's this happened constantly when the nation would turn to idols, God would give them over to military defeat or national collapse or something, or he would raise up a king bringing deliverance, something. In this case, said, no, I'm not going to help you. Not only that, Amaziah was unable to listen to reason because of his idolatry, because of his wickedness. At this point, the story continues to speak to me as a human being and hopefully to yourself. There comes a time, if you rebel against God, where your heart becomes darker and darker and darker, and even the most obvious, reasonable things cannot be understood. I just don't get this. I don't understand. You see it all the time, don't you? You say, I don't, why did you go and do that? Didn't you realize this would be totally self-destructive? No, man, we warned you. We told you again and again and again. Don't do that. Don't play with it. Don't. Stop. Please, we're begging you. We're pleading with you. No, I don't understand. I'm not, whatever. Well, pride has the ability to do that. And this is exactly what the king of Israel said to Amaziah. Your heart has lifted you up in boastfulness. Now stay at home. Be content with what you have. Why should you provoke the trouble so that you fail, you and Judah with you? You can see there's discontentedness, there's vengeance in Amaziah, and there's bitterness. You can just see it all happening. Okay, let's continue on with the story. But Amaziah would not listen, for it was of God, in order that he might give them into the hand of the enemies, because they sought the gods of Edom. So Joash, the king of Israel, went up. He and Amaziah, king of Judah, faced one another in battle at Beth-shemesh, which belongs to Judah. So they're in Judah, facing each other in battle, and Judah was defeated by Israel. That's Amaziah's army. Judah was defeated by Israel, and every man fled to his home. And Joash, king of Israel, captured Amaziah, king of Judah. So now Amaziah is captured. His army's defeated. He's captured. And look what happens. Look what happens after he's captured. The son of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, at Beth-shemesh, I better read the whole verse again here. And Joash, the king of Israel, captured Amaziah, king of Judah, the son of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, at Beth-shemesh, and brought him to Jerusalem, and broke down the wall of Jerusalem for 400 cubits from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate. So 400 cubits, it's about 370 meters, something like that. So now he's captured Amaziah, our king who started so well. He's now a prisoner of war. He's now taken to Jerusalem, and the wall is broken down. And what happens then? Amaziah has to watch this, right? He seized all the gold and the silver and all the vessels that were found in the house of God in the care of Obed-Edom. He seized also the treasuries of the king's house, also hostages, and returned to Samaria. Oh dear. Can you see the darkness? Can you see what Amaziah's sin got him into? First of all, he's vengeful, right? And then after being vengeful, he's cruel. You see this cruelty against the Edomites. And after he's being cruel and his cruelty, then he becomes idolatrous. He worships the god of the Edomites. Then he takes counsel from not a prophet, but from his men around him, thinking, I've defeated Edom, I can defeat Israel. He does not defeat Israel. He's warned by his very enemy that he will fail and he will fall, and he falls, and his enemy takes him, captures him, takes him. Imagine the misery of Amaziah the king, watching his city's walls being torn down and all the treasures being plundered. And imagine, do you think for one moment he thought that maybe it's my own sin that brought this on us? Do you think? Who knows? But ladies and gentlemen, after many years of pastoral ministry, I can tell you that the prideful very infrequently don't see that. I stumbled a little bit with my language. Let me try again. After many years of ministry, I can see that the prideful often fail to see the damage that their pride has caused. It's amazing. It's just one of those things that makes you want to slap your face and say, am I really awake looking at this happening? Now let's continue as we bring this to a close. Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, lived, this is verse 25, the end of 2 Chronicles 25. Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, lived 15 years after the death of Joash, the son of Jehoaz. So the king that captured him dies, and Amaziah lives another 15 years. Well, how's he living? Now the rest of the deeds of Amaziah, from first to last, are they not written in the book of the kings of Judah? From the time when he turned away from the Lord, they made a conspiracy against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish, a city north of Jerusalem. But they sent after him to Lachish and put him to death there. And they brought him upon horses, and he was buried with his fathers in the city of David. So here's Amaziah after he turns from the Lord, probably when he's worshiping the idols. Of Edom. After this, the people conspire. They say, we're going to get him. We're going to get him for what he's done. Who knows? Amaziah doesn't come back to Jerusalem afterwards. He flees. He's in a city called Lachish. He's waiting in Lachish. He's hiding. The people find him. They kill him. So this is the ignoble end of a man who began quite well. It's really interesting, isn't it? Can you see this decline going on in this king? Is there a moral lesson for you and for me as we look at the life of as we look at the life of Amaziah? I'm going to put one of the verses that I read up on the screen for you as we ponder this and as I close this hopefully challenging message. But Amaziah would not listen, for it was of God, in order that he might give them into the hand of their enemies, because they had sought the gods of Edom. The scriptures teach us and say directly that God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. I want to challenge you in considering Amaziah's message. And I want to challenge you about your pride. I want to challenge myself about my pride too. And isn't it interesting as we think about this, that these battles against who we are often fought internally in our own souls. They're hard battles to fight and hard battles to win. We often have to deal with them all by ourselves. So let's just put a list of things up on the screen here, a list of the moral failures of Amaziah as I close. He was half-hearted, vengeful, willing to compromise, but later corrected, victorious but cruel, continued to be vengeful. He was hard-hearted, he did not listen. He was defeated. He spent 15 years in exile, and after that, he was murdered. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you like these, like, share, and subscribe. Maybe there will be of use to somebody else, and possibly we can grow the channel. Who knows? This has been a look at a very interesting king, a man named Amaziah, king of Judah, discontent, pride, and bitterness. God bless you. We will see you soon.